Travelling through realms of the unimaginable. A 3,500 microgram 25I-NBOMe trip report, posted to shroomery.org. So let me preface this by saying that I was very young and stupid at the time. I do not recommend taking such a high dose, or even taking this drug at all. This was my third psychedelic experience ever. I was around 16 at the time. I was incredibly intrigued by psychedelic substances due to my mushroom and LSD experiences in the past. I had taken 4 tabs of acid my second time, so taking 2 tabs of 25I at the time did not seem like such a huge amount, although they were very highly dosed tabs. I was already smoking cannabis the whole time. This was my own homegrown Della Haze. I put the tabs in my mouth around 5 PM. I was sitting on my friend's couch in his bedroom in the garage of his mother's house. I held the tabs in my mouth for about 20 minutes, and then swallowed all my spit with the tab in it. I was with a friend and my friend's friend. My friend's friend had never seen somebody in the midst of a trip before. I ended up going outside with my friend and started talking to his brother and his brother's friend. They were very young and had just come back from school. They were being naughty and smoking cigarettes outside my friend's garage. For the sake of this story, let's call my friend Sky. While we were talking to Sky's brother, I started to feel a very strong MDMA-like body feeling. We walked out to the back of his house and played on the clothesline drying rack for a while. I remember being in awe, feeling like Sky was some sort of little genius, because he had his shit together while I started losing mine. He also wore glasses. This could also be somewhat why I thought that. This happened some years back, so my memory of the situation is not 100%. At this point, I assumed we smoked a couple of joints. I was quite the cannabis fiend at the time. We went back to his room, and then shit really got real. This was about 40 minutes after that we had first taken the tab. I started to hallucinate heavily. Sky's face was shifting constantly, and there were dragons flying out of the wall. The music was mostly hues of yellow and blue and felt very crisp. The next 6 minutes or so were filled with multiple bong hits, and we also ordered pizza in the midst of all this. I remember taking a big hit from the bong, and suddenly coming to the universal conclusion that there is no objective meaning to life. I was profoundly touched by the face of God in this moment. I spent a while trying to talk about my newfound revelation, but I could barely speak English. And then suddenly, I was in heaven. I thought to myself, holy shit, the Christians were right. I didn't know how I got there, but then I thought, wait, to get to heaven, you usually have to die first. It was a very cliche idea of heaven, clouds, angels, golden gates, flying babies with harps. At the moment, I thought that all the lightness turned to darkness, and that I was in hell. It was crazy. I started burning. I was on fire, and it was painful. I fought it off for a while, and then accepted that this was my fate. At the moment of acceptance, I was taken to a place, a dark place. I was acknowledged as accepting my fate, accepting that I would burn for eternity, and I saw about 10,000 people all gathering around small fire pits inside dustbins. A couple of people looked at me and shook their heads, so to say that I should not have come there. Ended up gathering around my own little fire pit. I started to come back to reality again, and found myself sitting by a gas heater. I took another couple of bong hits, and I sat on the couch taking bongs with my friend. Everything felt as if it was peeling back. Imagine stretching your face and pretending to have Botox. It felt like every single thing around me was doing exactly that. There was music playing, and I kind of recalled who I was, but I looked at the time, and only 20 minutes had actually passed. I was dumbfounded. This was actually incredible. I just closed my eyes and tried listening to the music. At this point, there was quite literally no difference between a vision with my eyes closed or open. After about 5 minutes of listening to music, I could see me and my friend sitting on the couch from the third person, and we were then snatched away from that image and taken to a different level of existence. I saw about 7, 8 foot tall people sitting around me and playing pool and just chilling, almost as if there was a party on. They introduced me to themselves as God. I was just freaked out by all this though. This was the most scary part. I couldn't speak at all, I was in shock. The one character I was sitting next to said, "Oh shit, not another tripper. What have you come here for?" I didn't respond though, I was too freaked out. This dude kinda just got annoyed, as if he could see through my insecurities within that moment, and they just wanted to party and enjoy themselves. And then there was me, a nervous wreck sitting on the couch beside him and not speaking whatsoever. Then, I was ripped out of this experience and landed back on Sky's couch. But I was not me, I was Sky. This seriously freaked us both out at the time, and somehow I can barely remember. I was ripped out of Sky's body again and put into this collective subconscious. I could see anybody's entire timeline, their entire lives in bubbles around me. I decided to take a look at my own, to analyse it. I saw some memories within these bubbles of my past, and the hard experiences I had to endure. One of the earliest memories was of somebody dying from an overdose. This was somewhat of a tear on my subconscious mind. I had many tears, being stabbed with a broken beer bottle by my drunk mother, witnessing my mother being abused, being rejected by girls in my past, being rejected by friends and other people I liked. All these things felt like gashes on my subconscious, but at that moment, I initiated the healing process, but was also very aware that the scars would not go away, but at the very least, they could heal. I felt as if I was viewing all these experiences from an objective viewpoint. I realised that it was not all done with ill intention, that all these happenings happened because of sickness within humanity, not because of something I have inherently done. It wasn't anybody's fault. It allowed me to not feel responsible for these bad things, and I forgave myself and the other people. It was hard, but necessary. After this happened, I somewhat returned to the couch with a feeling of relief. It was truly incredible. I felt like the healing process was beginning. I looked at the time, and it was like 30 minutes had passed. I asked Sky how much longer this would last, and he said 6 hours. I was a little scared when he told me this. What more could I possibly be shown? Oh, this is too much, I thought. I could barely process what had happened at that point. And then I was ripped out of my body once more, and shown a goddess, but the goddess did not speak. She was the utter epitome of beauty. I took away from the experience that this was meant to be a sexual reawakening. The only issue being was I had not had sex. I was in a realm where I was meant to be renewing my sexual identity, although I barely had one to begin with. It was then that I realised I was thrown out of the realm and brought to a place where I was shown my sexual habits of the past, which were all masturbation. I felt that I had an obsession with coming. It was very strange and harsh to come to this realisation, and I felt dirty about this. I felt like a fiend. I could barely stand to watch the video of explanation in front of me. It would be like having sex when you're not ready. I was not ready to witness this sex show in front of me at all. I was too young, too inexperienced to truly understand or appreciate the burlesque-like light show and sexual energies being displayed around me. I broke out of this realm in a panic and came back to the material world. I was freaked out, crying as if I had just been raped. I was afraid and nervous, and after about 5 minutes had passed, I'd been thrown into another realm and fell into a loop. It felt like I had lost the reason to be. I had lost all hope by now. I had no idea what was happening to me. I was just freaking out, looping with the thought of how I'd lost the plot over and over again. Apparently, the friend of Sky's was there freaking out as well, because I was just in a coma-like state repeating, "Lost the plot, lost the plot, lost the plot." Not long after that, I gave up fighting and let go. It was bliss. I was no longer me, and I was no longer in pain. I was just everything. It was a transcendental experience. I have no memory of this, but apparently Sky and his friend thought I was fucking out, so they gave me an SSRI that I brought with in case, and made me drink it down with water. A little bit later, I was almost entirely sober with only a little afterglow. I looked at the time, and it was like 9 PM. I was pretty bummed because I came back to reality so quickly. Anyway, this was a very eye-opening experience for me, and I've grown a lot since then. It was my third and almost most intense experience ever. Everything in my life changed after that day. This was a few years ago now, and looking back on it, I was far too reckless. I do not condone the use of any drugs. I've had countless experiences after this that have been far less experimental. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the read. Bloody hell, that was a mad one, wasn't it? 25I is a really messed up substance, to be honest. It's a bit like LSD in terms of the visuals and sort of the headspace it puts you into, although it's a lot more stimulating and is also fatal at heavy doses. This guy was honestly extremely lucky that he didn't end up in hospital or whatever, because 3,500 micrograms is way beyond the heavy experience. Whether he did take that actual amount, I don't know. I mean, he doesn't seem to really know exactly what was on the tabs. He just knows they were dosed heavily. And taking that at 16, like, holy crap, your mind when you're that young, it's still developing. You as a person, you're developing physically and mentally, spiritually, psychologically, etc. And having an experience that's so intense like this can oftentimes warp the trajectory of your life, either in a positive or negative way. It can be quite destructive, especially when it comes to NBOMe type psychedelics like these. They're really not the best ones, to be honest, for spiritual, psychological development. Obviously, you can have a mystical, transcendent state, but like I always say, best to just stick with the safe, novel psychedelics or anything that has a good safety profile. 25I really does not have that. I've actually taken it before and been very lucky that it was just sort of a fun, recreational, trippy experience. I had it at Leeds Festival 2016, and I think... Oh, actually, yeah, I spoke about this. The first time I ever had a tab, I got sold it as LSD, but it was actually 25I, and you can tell this because of the metallic sort of numbing sensation on your tongue, which is very different to normal LSD, which can slightly have a bitter metallic taste to it, but no numbing effect on your tongue at all. And as soon as that hit, I was like, oh shit, this is what I've been reading about, this is what I should have been prepared for. And just had to roll with the punches, really, and I ended up having a good trip. It was all very visual, pretty crazy. I also ended up accidentally smoking spice as well, but somehow ended up getting off that relatively unscathed. Very lucky thinking back. If I did that today, with all the stuff I've been through and how psychedelics have rewired my mind, I probably would have absolutely lost my head. But back then when you're young, you're just like, I just want to get fucked up, bro. So it's a completely different mindset, isn't it? But now I know that if I ever did that, I would be messing around, and it would be completely at odds with sort of my integral nature towards psychedelics, and it would probably bite me in the arse even more. When you're younger, sometimes you can end up going through these fucked up experiences, like taking bare 25I, and come away from it relatively safe. Only because I think when you're younger, your mind's still developing, doesn't have a clue of the potential for psychedelics and consciousness, and you are just experimenting. But later on, when you're mature and you're wise and you just do something stupid, your karma can come to bite you in the arse through psychedelics, sort of like give you a beating for misusing them. But when you're younger, you don't even know what they are really, so sometimes they get away with it. But obviously this doesn't mean that I condone anyone using 25I or even major psychedelics when they're younger. I think, to be honest, what you want to do when you're younger, I've stressed this a lot, is, yeah, I know obviously that when you're younger you are experimenting, and that's completely sound. I do encourage experimentation, especially if you can do it safe and wisely, and a lot of young people are safe and wise about stuff like this. But personally, you can experiment, but then there's going deep down the rabbit hole, which like having ego death experiences and exploring altered states of consciousness and mysticism, etc. I think maybe leave that till you're 18, 20 plus, when you've got your career down, your education down, you've sorted yourself out financially, you know what to do with your life, you've got your life purpose all sorted. But yeah, I mean, it's up to you. Everyone's experiences are relative, and the journey everyone's going to go on is a subjective one, so it might work for you, I don't know. But yeah, I guess it worked for me. Obviously I had some traumatic experiences with substances, but I worked through them and managed to come out of it a greater person. So yeah, that was just a little word of warning. Most interesting part about that report for me was it's something that I want to cover more in its own video, and that's the topic of ego replacement. Psychonaut Wiki has a good article on it here, and it is defined as the sudden perception that one's self of self and personality has been replaced with that of another person's, fictional characters and animals, or an inanimate object's perspective. This can manifest in a number of ways, which include, but are not limited, to feeling as if one has literally become another human, animal, or alien consciousness. During this state, the person will be unlikely to realise that their personality has been temporarily swapped with another's, and will usually not remember their previous life. Ego replacement is often accompanied by other coinciding effects, such as delusions, psychosis, and memory suppression. It is most commonly induced under the influence of moderate dosages of heavy dosages of hallucinogenic compounds, such as psychedelics, dissociatives, and deliriants. So yeah, very much a possible effect that can happen whilst in a psychedelic state or heightened state of consciousness. I've actually experienced it myself. I'll put the link in the description to the video where I experienced multiple personalities on LSD, where I was literally switching egos. There was no ego of the Vivek ego, my actual normal waking state. It was flipping between. I became like a sort of football hooligan, sort of, yeah, get him out of our country, lad. Proper nationalist. Then I became sort of like some old woman in bed who lived by herself, and she had a really depressing life, and she was like, nobody loves me anymore, and all this. And then I literally became sort of like crazy people. I became like, felt like as if I was some form of martyr as well. I felt like I was sort of Jesus-like being. It was really quite strange. I also sort of had feelings of becoming Judge Death from Judge Dredd. That was possibly one of the weirdest ones. I literally looked at this figure of Judge Death from Judge Dredd, and then I just was like honed in on it, and then I felt myself slipping away, and I literally like imagined myself being him in literally a physical form in another dimension, but I had no sense of being in actual like the Earth reality, if you want to call it that. Pretty crazy, to be honest. So yeah, the guy in this report, he ended up becoming his friend Sky. I wish he had detailed that a bit more, but obviously, I mean, he said his memory wasn't 100% accurate. When stuff like this happens, it's seriously ineffable. It's completely beyond human understanding. It's no shock that people can't fully describe these experiences and articulate them in a way that we can fully comprehend and grasp. And that's why a lot of people poo-poo it and say, "Oh, this is completely fake," when it really is possible. I've experienced it, and my mate a few months ago, he experienced it on 2CB and ketamine. I think that was the dose. Not the dose, the combination. And he had experiences of ego replacement, shifting in and out of his own egoic state of mind, and it really threw him at first, but after a while he sort of enjoyed how trippy and out there the experience was. And oftentimes it just depends on your attitude towards these effects, these strange effects that consciousness can go through. Obviously, if your ego resists it, it's going to be a bad time. But if you're accepting, like the guy in this report was, he accepted it and sort of had feelings of bliss. But he sort of just, the pendulum started swinging back and forth between sort of feelings of bliss, feelings of terror. Obviously, in the end, though, it seemed to have quite a positive effect on him. It's radically changed his life. But it could have easily gone the wrong way because, I mean, it's just a ridiculous amount of 3,500 micrograms of 25I. If that is true, it literally could be fatal. So just don't be doing that. To be honest, not really what you want to be doing on your weekends. Just chill out, and have a nice little joint with the boys or something, or do some safe psychedelic experimentation with a close group of friends. That's always good. Or even better, if you're at that point, just do it by yourself and get rid of all distractions and just embrace consciousness as it is. And just remember to accept, let go, surrender, and you should be alright. Yeah, hope you enjoyed this one, guys. Do some more 25I reports in the future. Some really interesting ones. They can warp consciousness in a really interesting way. So yeah, see you in the next one.